Welcome, rare gems. What happens when you bully a woman who has learned to understand people without needing to become like them? Bullying a Sigma female can be a serious mistake, not because she is some untouchable superhero, but because she may respond to cruelty very differently from what the bully expects. She may not give you the dramatic reaction you were hoping for. Instead, she may watch, think, remember, and quietly decide what your behavior tells her about you. A Sigma female understands that not every battle deserves her energy. She can recognize manipulation without immediately falling into it, and she can walk away from certain people without carrying their opinions everywhere she goes. More importantly, difficult experiences can teach her sharper boundaries, better judgment, and a deeper understanding of human behavior. If you have ever been mocked, excluded, underestimated, or treated badly simply because you were different, remember this: being different is not a weakness. Sometimes your greatest strength is refusing to let someone else's cruelty determine who you become. In this video, we are going deeper than the usual Sigma stereotypes. We will explore 10 uncomfortable reasons why bullying a Sigma female can backfire in ways the bully never expected. Watch until the end for the full picture. And if any of these points connect with your own experience, share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe and join our community for more honest conversations about Sigma psychology, strength, boundaries, and personal growth. Now, let's get started. The rare gems. Number 1. She doesn't need to beat the bully at the bully's game. This is psychologically important. If someone uses gossip, intimidation, humiliation, or social manipulation, responding with the same behavior means accepting their rules. Have you ever noticed how a person can insult you, provoke you, spread stories about you, and then somehow make you feel like you are the one who needs to defend yourself? That is one of the traps a Sigma female learns to recognize. When someone uses gossip, humiliation, intimidation, or social manipulation against her, the obvious temptation is to fight back using the same weapons. Spread a story about them, embarrass them publicly, find their weakness, and expose it. Win the argument so everyone knows who was right. But there is a problem with that approach. The moment she starts playing by the bully's rules, the bully has already influenced her behavior. This is why walking away from the game can be more powerful than winning it. Suppose someone at work constantly makes sarcastic comments about her, encourages others to laugh, and then pretends everything is just a joke. She could spend weeks preparing the perfect comeback. Instead, she may calmly document inappropriate behavior, keep communication professional, involve the appropriate person when necessary, and stop giving the situation unnecessary emotional energy. That is not weakness. It is strategic thinking. She understands something many people learn only after years of painful experience. Not every battle is worth becoming a different person to win. And this is one reason people may identify with the Sigma mindset. You can defend yourself without becoming cruel. You can establish consequences without creating drama. You can speak the truth without turning yourself into another source of chaos. Sometimes, the strongest response is not defeating the person who mistreated you. It is refusing to let their behavior determine your character. Because if someone tries to drag you into the mud, you do not prove your strength by becoming better at mud fighting. You prove it by deciding where your energy belongs. That is wisdom. And for a Sigma female, protecting her character can matter far more than winning a temporary argument. Number 2. She may study the bully instead of fighting the bully. A bully expects an emotional reaction: anger, fear, tears, an argument, or an attempt to prove herself. But a highly self-contained woman may become more interested in understanding why this person needs to target her. What if the person you are trying to intimidate is not thinking about how to fight you, but trying to understand you? That is where bullying a Sigma female can become very different from what the bully expected. Many bullies depend on reaction. They provoke someone, watch their face, listen for anger, and wait for that emotional explosion that makes them feel powerful. But a self-contained woman may do something completely different. She may become curious. Instead of immediately asking, "How do I get back at this person?" she may start asking, "Why does this person behave like this?" She notices when the bullying happens. Is it only around certain people? Does the person become bolder when they have an audience? Do they insult others when they feel insecure? Do they pretend their cruel comments are jokes when challenged? Are they trying to make her react because they want attention? Those details matter. For example, imagine a woman at work who keeps receiving sarcastic comments from the same colleague. At first, she might wonder whether she has done something wrong. But after watching carefully, she notices that the colleague behaves differently when the manager is present. The comments become subtle. When friends are around, the behavior becomes more aggressive. Suddenly, what looked like random hostility begins to look like a pattern. That changes everything. She is no longer trapped inside the emotion of the moment. She is looking at the situation from the outside. This does not mean she is secretly plotting revenge or trying to diagnose the bully. It means she is learning to separate facts from emotional noise. And that is a powerful Sigma quality: reflection before reaction. Sometimes the wisest response to bad behavior is to understand it clearly before deciding what to do about it. You may discover that the person trying hardest to make you feel small is revealing far more about themselves than they ever intended. So do not underestimate quiet observation. A person who stops reacting blindly can start seeing clearly, and once you see the pattern, you become much harder to manipulate. Number 3. Humiliation can make her more dangerous socially, not emotionally. Some people become emotionally shattered when they are embarrassed publicly. What happens when embarrassing someone does not make her fall apart, but instead teaches her exactly who she is dealing with? That is where humiliation can produce an unexpected result in a Sigma female. She may feel hurt, angry, or embarrassed in the moment. She is human. But after the emotion settles, she may start looking at the situation with uncomfortable clarity. Who started it? Who encouraged it? Who laughed? Who watched and said nothing? Who later pretended they had nothing to do with it? That information can change how she sees an entire social circle. She does not necessarily need revenge. In fact, revenge can keep her emotionally attached to the person who hurt her. Instead, she may simply withdraw the things that once made that person's life easier. Maybe she used to recommend them for opportunities. She used to defend them when others misunderstood them. She used to keep their private problems confidential. She used to invite them into conversations, introduce them to useful people, or give them the benefit of the doubt. Then one humiliating incident reveals something she cannot unsee. So she stops. Imagine a colleague who regularly mocks her in front of others, but privately depends on her for advice and support. After being humiliated publicly, she does not create a scene. She simply becomes professional. She answers work-related questions, but nothing more. She no longer covers mistakes. She no longer shares useful information that was never hers to provide. She no longer speaks positively about someone who has repeatedly treated her badly. Nothing dramatic happened, yet suddenly the person who thought they had control realizes that they have lost access to a relationship that quietly benefited them. This is an important lesson about the Sigma mindset. Strength does not always look like confrontation. Sometimes it looks like withdrawing your cooperation from people who repeatedly misuse your kindness. She does not have to ruin anyone's reputation. She can simply stop maintaining it for them. And that can be a powerful consequence of mistreating someone who pays close attention to character. Once she understands what you are capable of, she may never interact with you in quite the same way again. Number 4, she may refuse to give the bully the satisfaction of becoming bitter. This is one of the most underestimated reactions. A bully may want to change her personality. What if the biggest thing a bully wants from you is not your tears, but a permanent change in who you are? That is something many people overlook. Bullying is not always about the insult itself. Sometimes the deeper goal is to make another person uncomfortable in their own skin. The bully wants her to become cautious, defensive, suspicious, withdrawn, or constantly worried about what people might say next. But a Sigma female may eventually make a very different decision. She may decide that the person who hurt her does not deserve to redesign her personality. Of course, that does not mean she feels nothing. Being mocked, excluded, or deliberately embarrassed can hurt deeply. Pretending otherwise is not strength. Real strength is allowing yourself to recognize the pain without allowing the person responsible to become the architect of your future. Consider a young woman who is repeatedly mocked at school for the way she speaks. At first, she may become quieter. She may stop answering questions because she does not want another joke at her expense. But eventually she realizes something important. If she changes everything about herself because someone else was cruel, then the bully is still controlling her long after the bullying stops. So she makes a different choice. She continues speaking. She continues learning. She continues building friendships with people who treat her properly. She may become more careful about who she trusts, but she does not become a bitter person who assumes everyone is an enemy. That distinction matters. A Sigma mindset is not about becoming emotionally cold. It is about becoming more deliberate with your emotional energy. You can learn from what happened without allowing it to poison everything that comes afterward. You can become wiser without becoming cruel. You can become more private without becoming isolated. And you can remember what someone did without spending the rest of your life trying to punish them for it. Sometimes the most satisfying outcome is simply this. The person who wanted to change you fails. You heal. You grow. You keep becoming yourself. And eventually, their opinion becomes just another piece of noise from a chapter you have already outgrown. Number 5. She can separate the incident from her identity. A cruel person may say something designed to make her question herself. You're weird. You're unlikable. Nobody respects you. The psychologically mature response is realizing that someone's treatment of you is information about their behavior, not automatically evidence about your worth. What if the cruelest thing someone says about you is not actually a description of you, but an attempt to make you see yourself through their eyes? This is where emotional maturity can change everything for a Sigma female. When someone says, you are weird, nobody likes you, or nobody respects you, the words can hurt. There is no wisdom in pretending that insults never affect us, but there is a huge difference between being hurt by someone's words and allowing those words to become your identity. A mature woman learns to separate the incident from the person she is. Someone treating you badly tells you something about their behavior. It does not automatically tell you your value. For example, imagine a woman who gives an opinion during a meeting and someone laughs at her, calling her foolish in front of everyone. She might feel embarrassed for the rest of the day. Later, she may replay the moment and wonder, maybe I really am stupid. But then she asks a better question. Was my idea actually wrong, or was someone simply disrespectful in the way they responded to it? That question creates space between reality and humiliation. Maybe her idea needed improvement. Fine, she can learn from that, but she does not have to accept the insult as a verdict on her intelligence. This is one reason the Sigma mindset can be powerful when it is grounded in self-awareness rather than ego. She learns to examine criticism without swallowing every cruel opinion thrown at her. There is a huge difference between correction and degradation. One helps you improve, the other tries to make you feel smaller. And once you understand that difference, certain insults lose their ability to define you. You can admit your mistakes without calling yourself a failure. You can acknowledge your weaknesses without feeling ashamed of being human. You can accept that someone dislikes you without concluding that you are unlikable. That is real psychological strength, because the goal is not to become someone who cannot be hurt. The goal is to become someone who can be hurt without allowing another person's cruelty to write the story of who they are. Number 6. She doesn't necessarily need revenge to feel that the situation is finished. This is where popular revenge narratives miss the point. What if the real victory is reaching a point where the person who hurt you simply stops mattering? That sounds simple, but psychologically, it can be one of the hardest things to achieve. When someone humiliates, betrays, or bullies you, there is often a strong temptation to make them regret it. You imagine the perfect comeback. You think about exposing them. You want them to feel the same pain they caused you. But revenge can create an unexpected problem. It can keep the person permanently connected to your thoughts. You may stop speaking to them while still arguing with them in your head. A Sigma female may eventually recognize that trap. She can decide that closure does not require punishment. Sometimes closure means accepting what happened, learning from it, setting whatever boundaries are necessary, and then continuing with her life. Consider someone who was bullied by a former friend. Months later, that person is still checking their social media, asking mutual friends what they are doing, and secretly hoping they fail. Technically, the friendship ended long ago. Emotionally, it has not ended at all. Now compare that with someone who reaches a different place. She stops checking. She stops explaining. She stops replaying the conversations. She stops wondering whether the other person regrets what they did. Her attention gradually returns to her own life. That is not pretending the experience never happened. It is refusing to give the experience unlimited space. This is where the Sigma mindset can become meaningful. It is not about being cold or acting as though nothing hurts. It is about understanding that your future should not become a courtroom where you spend every day trying to prove that someone else was wrong. Sometimes you do not need the apology. You do not need the confession. You do not need the perfect ending. You simply need enough wisdom to say, I understand what happened. I understand what it taught me, and I am moving forward. And when someone who wanted to occupy your mind becomes someone you rarely think about anymore, something important has happened. They did not lose because you destroyed them. They lost because they stopped having access to your attention. Number 7. She may remember details. You assumed she forgot. People often underestimate quiet observers. They remember dates, contradictions, conversations, witnesses, messages, and subtle changes in behavior. What if the person you thought was ignoring what happened was actually paying attention to every detail? This is something people often misunderstand about a Sigma female. Quietness does not necessarily mean she was unaware. Sometimes she simply did not see the need to react immediately. She may remember the exact words that were used, the people who were present, what happened before the incident, what happened afterward, and how everyone's behavior changed once the situation became uncomfortable. She may remember a message that was deleted, a contradiction in someone's story, or the sudden friendliness of someone who previously joined in the bullying. Why does this matter? Because memory can create clarity. Imagine a woman at work who is repeatedly blamed for mistakes she did not make. Instead of arguing every time, she keeps records of conversations, saves relevant messages, and pays attention to what actually happened. Months later, the same person tries to repeat the pattern. This time, she does not have to rely on emotion. She has facts. That does not mean she is secretly preparing revenge or collecting information to destroy someone. Sometimes she is simply protecting herself from confusion. When people are being manipulated, they can begin questioning their own memory. They start wondering, did I misunderstand that? Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe it really was my fault. Careful observation can help break that confusion. This is one of the healthier sides of the Sigma mindset. Think before reacting. Notice patterns. Separate what you know from what you assume. Do not allow someone's confidence to become evidence that they are telling the truth. And there is another lesson here. If you treat a quiet person badly because you assume she will forget, you may be making a serious mistake. Some people do not respond immediately because they are still processing what happened. When they eventually speak, they may not need exaggerated accusations. They may simply describe what happened, when it happened, who was there, and what changed afterward. Suddenly, the situation looks very different. So never confuse silence with ignorance. Sometimes silence simply means someone is taking the time to understand the truth before deciding what to do with it. Number 8. She may discover that the bully needs an audience. Many bullying behaviors depend heavily on spectators. Remove the audience, and the performance loses some of its power. What happens when a bully suddenly realizes there is no audience left to impress? That is an important question because bullying is often more social than people realize. A person may act much bolder when friends are watching. The insult becomes louder. The joke becomes crueler. The humiliation becomes a performance. The goal is not always just to hurt one person. Sometimes it is to create a moment where everyone else watches and the bully feels powerful. A Sigma female may eventually recognize this pattern. She notices that the same person who acts fearless around a crowd becomes surprisingly ordinary when there is nobody around to impress. She notices who laughs, who encourages the behavior, and who stays silent because they are afraid of becoming the next target. Once she sees the audience behind the performance, the behavior can start looking very different. Imagine someone repeatedly making embarrassing comments about a woman during lunch because several co-workers laugh every time. Instead of arguing across the table, she stops feeding the performance. She does not trade insults. She does not desperately try to win the crowd. If the behavior crosses a serious line, she addresses it appropriately and clearly. Suddenly, the bully has a problem. The reaction they wanted is not coming. The crowd is no longer watching a dramatic confrontation. They are watching someone behave badly while another person remains composed and refuses to participate. That can change how the behavior is perceived. This does not mean every bully needs an audience, and it does not mean ignoring serious harassment is always the right response. Sometimes the safest and wisest decision is to involve trusted people, workplace authorities, school officials, or other appropriate support. The deeper lesson is about understanding social pressure. A Sigma female may realize that she does not have to perform for the crowd either. She does not need to turn someone else's cruelty into entertainment. And that is where wisdom enters the picture. When you stop feeding unnecessary drama, you sometimes expose it for exactly what it is. Not strength, not confidence, just someone performing badly because they thought everyone was watching. Number 9. She may become extremely difficult to provoke a second time. The first incident can teach someone what tactics are being used against them. What happens when someone uses the same trick twice, only to discover that the person they targeted has already learned the pattern? The first attack can catch anyone off guard. A cruel comment may leave her wondering whether she misunderstood the situation. A public embarrassment may make her question what just happened. A manipulative person may deliberately push a sensitive button and then act surprised when she reacts. But the second time can be completely different. A Sigma female may remember what happened and start recognizing the pattern behind it. She notices which words were chosen, when the behavior usually happens, who is present, and what reaction the other person seems to be trying to create. That awareness changes the game. For example, suppose someone repeatedly makes personal jokes about her in front of others. The first time, she becomes defensive and tries to explain herself. The bully sees that reaction and assumes they have discovered an easy way to provoke her. The next time, she understands exactly what is happening. She does not rush to defend herself. She may calmly say, "That comment was unnecessary," and continue with what she was doing. Or, if the behavior is serious and repeated, she may document it and address it through the appropriate channel. The important part is that she is no longer reacting blindly. This is one of the healthier sides of the Sigma mindset. Experience becomes information. A painful encounter can teach you where your emotional buttons are and which people deliberately try to push them. And once you understand your own triggers, someone else has less control over them. That does not mean she becomes emotionless. It means she becomes more deliberate. The bully may think, "This worked before." She may be thinking, "I know exactly what you are trying to do." That difference is enormous. You do not become stronger by never being affected. You become stronger when you learn from what affected you, understand the pattern, and refuse to keep repeating the same emotional reaction. Sometimes the first encounter teaches the lesson. The second encounter proves you learned it. Number 10. She can make boundaries look colder than anger. Anger still creates interaction. A boundary ends interaction. There is a major psychological difference. What feels more final? Someone shouting at you for hurting them, or someone calmly deciding that you will no longer have access to them? That difference is easy to underestimate. When people are angry, they usually want something from the other person. They want an explanation, an apology, recognition, or some acknowledgement that they were wronged. Anger creates a conversation, even when that conversation is ugly. A boundary can be very different. A Sigma female may reach a point where she realizes that arguing with someone who repeatedly disrespects her is not going to produce anything useful. So instead of creating another dramatic confrontation, she changes the level of access that person has to her life. She may stop sharing personal information. She may keep conversations strictly professional. She may document inappropriate behavior. If the situation involves harassment at work or school, she may report it through the proper channels. If it is a friendship, she may decide that the friendship is finished. No screaming, no threats, no dramatic announcement, just a decision. For example, imagine a friend repeatedly makes humiliating jokes about her in front of other people. Each time, she explains that it bothers her. Nothing changes. Eventually, she stops inviting that friend into personal situations and limits contact to what is necessary. The friend may complain, "Why are you acting differently?" The answer is simple. The relationship changed because the behavior changed. This is where boundaries become powerful. They are not punishments designed to make someone suffer. They are decisions about what you will participate in and what you will no longer tolerate. That distinction matters because anger can disappear after an argument. A boundary can remain long after the emotion has passed. And this is where the Sigma mindset can be useful when it is grounded in maturity. You do not have to prove your strength by becoming aggressive. Sometimes strength means being clear about what you will accept and consistent about what happens when that line is crossed. A person may ignore your anger. They may argue with your explanation. They may even mock your feelings. but they cannot force you to keep giving them the same access to your life. Sometimes the coldest-looking decision is simply a peaceful one. I have seen enough, and I am choosing differently now. Number 11. The biggest mistake is assuming her silence means defeat. What if her silence is not a sign that you won, but a sign that she has already decided what happens next? This is one of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with a Sigma female. They see her become quiet after an insult, a betrayal, or an act of bullying, and they immediately assume she is scared, weak, or unable to respond. But silence has many meanings. Sometimes a person is frightened. Sometimes they are overwhelmed and need time to process what happened. Sometimes they are controlling their emotions because they know that reacting in anger could make the situation worse. And sometimes they are simply finished arguing. A Sigma female may choose not to respond because she has realized that another argument will not solve anything. Instead, she may document what happened, save messages, remember who was present, speak to someone trustworthy, or take the appropriate formal steps. Consider someone who is repeatedly harassed at work. The bully keeps making comments, expecting an emotional confrontation. But she says very little. She keeps records, remains professional, and eventually reports the behavior through the proper channels. The bully may think she did nothing. In reality, she may have been doing something far more useful than arguing. She was building clarity. This is an important lesson about strength. You should never assume that a quiet response means a person has accepted what happened. Sometimes silence is simply the space between an experience and a decision. And there is another uncomfortable truth. A person does not always announce when they are finished with you. They may not send a long message explaining every reason. They may not demand an apology. They may not give you the dramatic ending you expected. They may simply change their behavior. The conversations become shorter. The access disappears. The trust is gone. The relationship becomes distant. And you eventually realize that the person you thought was still negotiating with you had already made their decision. So never mistake quietness for surrender. A Sigma female may be silent because she is afraid, because she is thinking, because she is protecting herself, or because she has reached a point where your behavior no longer deserves another argument. Sometimes the loudest message is the one that never needs to be spoken. I am done. In final words. What if the real strength of a Sigma female is not how hard she can fight, but how wisely she chooses what deserves her energy? That is the deeper lesson behind everything we have explored. A Sigma female is not someone who never gets hurt, never feels embarrassed, or never struggles. She is human. What makes the Sigma mindset different is the ability to learn from difficult experiences without allowing those experiences to completely rewrite her character. Bullying may hurt her, but it can also teach her to recognize manipulation, protect her privacy, set clearer boundaries, observe people more carefully, and become more deliberate about who receives her trust. And perhaps that is why you may recognize yourself in the Sigma mindset. You have learned through experience that strength is not always about having the perfect comeback. Sometimes it is about keeping your character intact when someone is trying to pull you into their chaos. If you have ever been misunderstood, underestimated, excluded, or treated badly for being different, remember this: you do not have to become cruel simply because someone was cruel to you. Take the lesson. Protect your peace, strengthen your boundaries, and keep growing. Your experiences can shape your wisdom without controlling your future. If this video gave you a new perspective, share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. I would genuinely love to hear how you see this topic. And if you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe and join our community. There is much more to explore about Sigma psychology, personal strength, boundaries and becoming wiser through life's difficult moments. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.